Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jake, the Muslim metaphysician. Today we have a nice episode for you guys today. I'm sure you were a little bit worried or wondering what this subject matter was all about, but if you read in the description of the video, you'll see I have a brief description of what it's about. And the title of the video is Thomas Aquinas confesses Jesus doesn't love Christians. Now, people are wondering, well, Jake, what are you on about? What the heck are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? Thomas Aquinas confesses that Jesus doesn't love Christians. This can't be right. Something must be wrong with this claim here. But you'll see in the description, I explain why St. Thomas Aquinas believes that God doesn't love humans. This is based on his affirmation of what is called the doctrine of no real relations. And I also discuss the implications of this doctrine for the incarnation itself. Okay, so the title is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the overall message will be shown that I'm not just completely making this up. So just want to say salam and hello to everybody in the chat right now, giving a couple minutes to get this thing started because I was running about 5 minutes later. So yeah, that's actually a good point. I think somebody's mentioning down the drain goes the argument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love disbelievers and therefore isn't morally perfect. That's right. Because if that's correct, then guess what? Thomas Aquinas, bye-bye. St. Augustine, bye-bye. Classical Christian theism, bye-bye. Because the God of classical Christian theism, he doesn't love you Christians. Not only does he not love Muslims, he doesn't love Christians. He doesn't love anybody other than himself. So you're going to see that. Yeah, people are saying not too many people live. That's fine here live. It doesn't really matter to me. Inshallah, this video will be meant as a resource for people, not just Muslims, but Christians as well, to take a look at, because I'm going to go deep into this. I'm going to be going to primary source material of St. Thomas Aquinas himself, explaining what this doctrine is all about and why it's contradictory and in pure conflict with the very tenets of basic Christianity itself. So when I say here, Thomas Aquinas confesses Jesus doesn't love Christians. Why am I saying this? Well, there's a doctrine which is called, as I said, the doctrine of no real relations. Now, what does this mean? This means that typically in a relationship or a relation, there are two things, and these things have a relationship or they're related to one another. For example, there's a relation between me and this bottle in that I'm taller than the bottle, for example. I weigh more than the bottle. There's a relation between me and the bottle. There's a relation between me and the camera, the distance, etc. Now, so I am really related to these things. I'm just explaining what a relation is first. Now, the doctrine of no real relation says that God is not really related to creation. Now, what does this mean? Well, I'm going to explain why also Christians have held this idea. People like Thomas Aquinas, and this isn't even just to pick on him, because you find this in St. Augustine and other early church fathers as well. The reason is because they had a strong notion of what's called divine timelessness and changelessness. So they believe that God is atemporal, meaning that he's not in time, and also that he doesn't change in any way whatsoever. God does not change in any way whatsoever. And so their idea, I'm just giving the basics, and then we're going to go into detail and read directly from Thomas Aquinas himself. And I see Canadian Catholic here in the chat, reminder, and he's talking something about Averroes. This guy, everybody stay away from this guy. He's a complete sham. Just a couple minutes ago, he just came on Clubhouse, entered the room. We were just sitting there. He enters the room, and he says, "Oh, well, I want to hear your critique of the Trinity." I said, "Well, Josh, you know who I am. Aren't you familiar with my material?" "Oh, no, I'm not familiar with your material." Guess what? I exposed it because I showed a screenshot of where he just made a post about my debate with James White, which he said he rewatched, which means that he watched it twice. This is the second time watching it, in which he said I handled James White in the debate. But yet he had no idea about any of my material, didn't know who I was. So the guy's a liar. He's a little off, something going on. I don't know what it is, but just stay away from him. Stay away from his channel. He's not genuine for discussion, unfortunately. Now, what I'm going to explain here, and this guy is going to be put in timeout. Sorry, bro. You're put in timeout. You're in timeout, bro, for your dishonesty. I'm sorry. I can't handle that. So anyway, back to the discussion before this guy rudely interrupted. So doctrine of no real relations has to do with the fact that God is not really related to the universe in any significant way. Now, the reason why they hold to that doctrine is because they say that God is completely outside of time and he doesn't change in whatsoever. That's their presupposition. Now, fast forwarding, well, what does God being related to the universe have to do with it? What's the problem? How does that affect his timelessness and changelessness, right? Well, the idea is this, that creation is not eternal and God is eternal. So how could God be really related to something eternally if it doesn't exist? Well, he can't. That doesn't make sense. Okay, we agree. Well, they say then, well, if creation had a beginning in time and God is really related to creation, then that would be a new relationship which is formed between God and creation, which would mean that God would be in time because he changes from not being related to the universe to being related to the universe, meaning that he causally sustains the universe, as we're going to see with love, which is relational in this case, that he loves the universe. He can't really love the universe because he didn't love the universe from eternity. And so if he does, that's a new relation which is formed, which would mean that God would be good. God would change, and therefore God would be in time. And for them, that's a no-no. That's a big no-no. That's a problem. And so they have this radical notion of the doctrine of no real relations, in which God is not really related to the universe. He doesn't really love humans. So how they deal with the verses in the Bible, for example, which says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whomsoever shall believe in him will have everlasting life. How they deal with this? Well, God so loved the world. Well, wait, it says that God so loved the world. Well, because of their metaphysical assumptions that God can't love the world, because then that would mean he would change from not loving the world to loving the world. What do they say? They say, oh, what that means is God loving us is really us loving God. So they came up with this theory, which is called the theory of mixed relations, in which there is a relation between God and men in a sense, but it's a one-way relation, meaning that men or creation is really related to God, but God is not really related to humans. You see? So we can love God, but God doesn't love us. we are really related to him, but he is not really related to us. Well, what does this sound like, folks? This sounds like a bad relationship. Imagine you love this woman so much, and let's say you loved her so much, uh, and let's make it halal. Let's say she's your wife that, and you're married, and you love her so much. So it's a one-way relation, meaning you love your wife, but your wife doesn't love you. What kind of relationship would that be? That would be strange, quite strange and absurd, right? That you love your wife, but your wife doesn't love you. That's what's happening with the God of classical Christian theism. That's the terminology they want to use, which some Christians don't agree with it because it doesn't make any sense with the Bible. Because how do you deal with God to love the world? Well, he loved the world. Well, you're saying he didn't love the world. He never does. It seems a bit strange. Also, which I talked about before, this Care Bear Christianity, which, Jesus loves you, and the God of the Trinity, the Trinitarian God, he loves you so much, and all this kind of business. And they say, oh, the God of the Qur'an, he doesn't love these people, or he doesn't love these. Well, the God of classical Christian theism, as espoused by Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine, he doesn't love anybody. And wait, and here's where Jesus comes into the mix, because Jesus doesn't love Christians. Well, why did I say Jesus? Well, I've been talking about God here. Well, if Jesus is God and God doesn't love Christians, including any creation, including Christians, well, then that would mean that Jesus doesn't love Christians. But wait, I thought it was all about Jesus. He's this loving individual, and he loves everybody so much, and he wants people to come into kingdom and just believe in him, and you'll have everlasting life. All that goes out the window now. I'm ripping the mask off, and I'm saying this ain't going to work. Not on classical Christian theism. If you want to be a neoclassical theist, or you want to, and I don't like these titles because I think in a way it's a bit disrespectful to the quote unquote neoclassical theists, like people like Ryan Mullins and other people that I've had on my channel. But I'm just using the terminology for the sake, because those who are familiar with it, they understand what I'm talking about with this conversation. So it gets rid of that argument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not all-knowing because he doesn't love so-and-so and so-and-so, even though he does, because he's al-Wudud, and the God of the Qur'an is loving and merciful towards his creation in a real way. He is really related to his creation. You see? At least this is my view. This is my view that I'm representing. You see, because the God of the Qur'an is clear. He's merciful to his creation, and he loves his creation. Unlike the God of classical Christian theism, which says, no, he doesn't. He doesn't, because then that would mean he changes because he developed a new relation. Because they have this false understanding that God has to be completely outside of space, time, and he has to be completely unchanging. You see? They bring their metaphysical assumptions to the text of even the Bible itself, and people have been known to do this with the Qur'an as well, so don't get it twisted, which is false. Doesn't work, because the God of Scripture is loving and merciful to his creation, not this creating this doctrine of no real relations, which doesn't make any sense, in order to try to make sense of your preconceived ideas about God and the God of Aristotle and these Greek philosophers and everything. No, sorry, you're not going to do that with the text of the Qur'an, that's for sure. Qur'an and Sunnah. But anyway, back to the Thomas Aquinas. And for people who don't know, St. Thomas Aquinas is not no small figure. He's a doctor of the church. He's a doctor of the Catholic Church. Now, it's not unique to him, so I'm not even picking on him, but I just used him as an example because he's quite explicit in his works. You can find this in St. Augustine as well, going all the way back to the 5th century. Why? Because this is coming from Neoplatonism, Platonic doctrine, Aristotelianism, because God can't relate to the universe because he can't change in any way. This all goes back to the ancient Greeks. So, yeah, it's not unique to Aquinas in any way whatsoever. But what we're going to do here, because I explain what the doctrine of no real relations is, I explain why they held the view, and I'm explaining the implications of it. The implications of it is God doesn't really love the universe. And if he doesn't really love the universe and Jesus is God, then Jesus doesn't really love the universe, which means he doesn't even love Christians, let alone he doesn't love Muslims, let alone Christians or anybody. Then it removes this whack argument that they want to bring against the God of the Qur'an because he supposedly doesn't love unbelievers, even though he does, because he's al-Wadud, right? But, and you have to understand, I'm not going to go too in depth with the Quranic understanding, but it's removing this silly argument. At least if you're a classical Christian theist, then you can't make that argument because your God doesn't love anybody. Forget about disbelievers. He doesn't even love believers. He didn't even love the human nature of Jesus Christ himself. Didn't even love that, which we're going to see. And now I'm going to point out a further implication of the view, because actually, you know what? Let me hold off on that. Let's stick to the doctrine of no real relations as brought out by St. Thomas Aquinas. So what I'm going to do here, because this is what I like to do on my channel, I like to bring you primary sources. This is ilmi right here. Okay, we're going to break this down to a fine powder, and I'm going to show you. And you guys are not going to get this, and with all due respect to the other channels, you're not going to get this on the other channels. You're not going to get this to where they bring up these primary sources and are showing you in detail in the Christian, theological text. You're not going to get it anywhere else. Trust me. So let's deal with this. Boom. This is, and I told you guys this several times, you need to hit it up. If you want to know anything about the Church Fathers, check out the website, New Advent. They've got a lot of material on there. It's run by a Catholic, I'm pretty sure it's a Catholic website and organization. And anyway, they got a lot of translations of the Church Fathers, especially early works and so on. So anyway, this is in the Summa, which is one of Thomas Aquinas' most famous works. This is in the first part, and he has it broken down into questions. So it's in his book called the Summa, first part, question number 28. And it says the divine relations. And it says, Article 1, whether there are real relations in God. You see? And we're going to see here. Objection 1. It would seem that there are no real relations in God, for Boethius, who is a church father, says, quote, all possible predicaments used as regards the Godhead refer to the substance, for nothing can be predicated relatively. So see what he's saying? Nothing can be predicated of God, relatively speaking. But whatever really exists in God can be predicated of him. Therefore, no real relations exist in God. See? Now, he's setting that up. And he goes on to explain how there's real relations in God in the sense of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But you'll see further down where he explains where, one second here, where he explains about the whether or not God can be really related to the world. So, one second. Okay. Yeah. So, let's just read objection 2, actually. Further, Boethius says that relation in the Trinity of the Father to the Son and of both to the Holy Ghost is the relation of the same to the same. But a relation of this kind is only a logical one, for every real relation requires and implies in reality 2 terms. Therefore, the divine relations are not real relations, but are formed only by the mind. Okay. And then objection 3, further, the relation of paternity is the relation of a principle But to say that God is the principle of creatures does not import any real relation, but only a logical one. Therefore, paternity in God is not a real relation. While the same applies for the same reason to the other relations in God. Further, the divine generation proceeds by way of an intelligible word, but the relations following upon the operation of the intellect are logical relations. Therefore, paternity and filiation in God, consequent upon generation, are only logical relations. Now, he's going to reply to each one of these points here. You see, he's going to reply to each one of these. Now, let's go down to, let's see. Okay, let's go to reply to objection 3, which was talking about this real relation business, where he says, as the creature proceeds from God in diversity of nature, God is outside the order of the whole creation, nor does any relation to the creature arise from his nature. For he does not produce the creature by necessity of his nature, but by his intellect and will, as is above explained, and he references his previous work, previous passages. Therefore, there is no real relation in God to the creature, whereas in creatures there is a real relation to God, because creatures are contained under the divine order, and their very nature entails dependence on God. On the other hand, the divine processions are in one and the same nature, hence no parallel exists. Reply to objection 4. So you'll see the main point here that I want you guys to see. Listen to what he says. Let's see if are you guys still I do Canadian Catholic, you back, dude. I thought I booted you off of here. Let me see what's going on. He says, I do think Jake beat James White. Well, hold on a second, buddy. You just got through on Clubhouse just about 30 minutes ago. You came on stage when I was there, and you said you weren't familiar with my material on the Trinity. Yet you watched my debate with James White at least twice, and you said that I beat James White. Come on, man. If you want to have an honest dialogue, let's do it. Come on Clubhouse and we can have a chat. Stop playing games as if you don't know me. You haven't watched my stuff. You're on my channel watching me right now, and you watch my debate twice. I'm too busy for these kind of baby games, dude. Seriously. Grow up, man. Stop with this baby game stuff. Now, back to reality here, okay? And he's trying to win me over. I just blocked him from this channel. Sorry, buddy, you're gone. I don't have time for the foolishness, man. If you want to have a serious conversation, but stop playing games. Okay, so you see the highlighted part there. It says reply to objection 3. What does it say? Therefore, there is no real relation in God to the creature, whereas in creatures, there is a real relation to God. You see? So God is not really related to creatures, but there is a real relation from God to creatures. So it's one way. It's like you loving your wife, but your wife doesn't really love you. And then he goes on to give his explanation, because creatures are contained in the divine order, and their very nature entails dependence on God. So this, and I'm not strawmanning him, this is the doctrine of no real relations. This is it in one sentence right here. There is no real relation in God to the creature, whereas in creatures, there is a real relation to God. You see? So how could God love humans if he's not really related to them? Well, he doesn't. He simply doesn't really love them. Let's see here. I think that's the main point, because I want to try to keep it with you guys, because this is a deep topic, but I want to really keep it as simple as I can with you guys. Let me see here. Yeah, we don't even really need. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff here on the Divine Processions, which is the relationship between the Father, Son, and Spirit. I'm not going to get involved with that. You guys have heard me talk about that quite a bit. So this is the point. The point is that he's saying explicitly here, there's no real relation in God to the creature. There is a real relation from creatures to God, meaning we can relate to God, but God can't relate to us. God forbid that we actually had a belief in a God that actually loved us and that he had mercy on us, etc. Now, this is what I mean here, folks. So let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Now, what I'm going to do is when this video is over, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to put a link to that section there. And just so you guys know, what I just read was question Summa, which is the book called Summa Theologiae. First part, question number 28. It's article 1. And the highlighted section was reply to objection 3, where he makes this explicit. You could read the context and read further if you want, but I'm going to drop the link to where I just read in the description of this video. Now, second thing, I'm going to go to another point in the same work, the Summa, because here's what you guys need to understand the implications of this. When Christians tell you that Jesus loves you, we can say, wait a second. Are you a Catholic? Or do you believe in classical Christian theism? Because St. Augustine, Boethius, who was just quoted, St. Thomas Aquinas, they believed that God was utterly timeless and changeless, such that if he loves us, then he went from not loving us to loving us. And that would be a real relation, which would mean he would change, which would mean that he's in time. And if that's the case, whoa, how can we have that? So you got to ask questions about that, or just send them this video and you can let them know what the deal is. Yeah, man, we've got the good brother in the chat, the one and only the mod. You know who I'm talking about. Hit that miswhack on the thumbs up button. Hit that like. Get this video out there, inshallah. So here's the thing. If Jesus is God and God doesn't love us, then Jesus doesn't love us. That's the understanding. But of course, what they want to say is, well, wait a second. Jesus had a human nature. So maybe Jesus loves us with the human nature. But what I'm going to show you here is if Jesus's human nature is created, then when it says in the famous passage, right? John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jumping down to verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. That's what they say. The second person of the Trinity, the Son, became a man in Jesus of Nazareth. Well, what does that mean? You see? What does that mean? Because there are two main things, actually three main things, depending on how you slice it, okay, that I want to tackle here. First, that this doctrine of no real relations is motivated by metaphysical assumptions, which are problematic for the Bible itself, because it says God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Well, if he doesn't really love the world, what is that talking about? And we can go through numerous passages. God is love and all these different things. Well, let's think about this. First one is God doesn't really love you. Jesus doesn't really love you because he's God. And this argument that the God of the Qur'an is deficient because he doesn't love disbelievers. Well, guess what? Your God doesn't love anybody. He doesn't even love Christians. This is the classical Christian position from their great shuyukh, their great scholars, ulama. So, and you can disagree with them as Ryan Mullins does, but he'll agree with me on this critique. I think that I'm representing it accurately. So, shout out to him. But the second point that I want to show is this doctrine is a thorn in the side for Christian theism itself. Now, what do I mean by that? Classical Christian theism says God is not really related to anything in creation. But it also holds the doctrine of the Incarnation, which is that God became flesh. Well, if God became flesh, well, what does that mean? Does it mean that it's a transformation, that God transformed and he became flesh in a way like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly? Well, most Christians don't view it that way. Or is it relational? Is it mean that God, the second person of the Trinity, became really related to a particular human nature in such a way that you could say that the human nature is his? Well, that's the way that most Christians understand it, and that's been classically understood. Most of them don't think it's a transformation type of idea. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys this book. It's called The Metaphysics of the Incarnation, published by Oxford Press. It goes deep into the philosophical stuff on the Incarnation. I've showed the book before of Philosophical and Theological Essays on the Trinity, also published by Oxford. That one deals with the Trinity. This one deals more with the Incarnation, the Metaphysics of the Incarnation. You see? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in the introduction of this text, because there's different models of the Incarnation, just like there are different models of the, what do you call it? Just like there are different models of the Trinity. So you'll see here, and you'll notice I've got all this stuff highlighted and whatnot. You see where it says there, transformationalist models. Transformationalist is a type of model, which means, and I'll read you here, an Orthodox theologian will hold, here you go. We may define transformation in this context roughly as a process in which a single subject loses some properties, certain properties associated with being a caterpillar. Actually, go before that. Okay. The first answer, let me go back even further here. Okay. Ever since the 12th century, when Peter Lombard offered an analysis of what he regarded as the three major available models, philosophical theologians have tried to sort the available models by category and assess the strengths and weaknesses of each kind of approach. One helpful way of doing so is to consider what proponents of the different models conceive becoming human or becoming flesh was to involve. Philosophical theologians have given two main answers to this, and we can accordingly distinguish between two main groups of models of the Incarnation. The first is straightforward. To become human means being transformed into a human. The Son is, to start with, a divine person, not a human one. At the Incarnation, he is transformed into a human being, just as a caterpillar becomes a butterfly by being transformed into one. So notice he gave you, there are two main schools. There are two main schools of incarnation. One is transformationalist model, and he's explaining what a transformationalist model would be. It's like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. So God becoming a man is God literally being transformed into a man. Now, I don't want to straw man Christians, because most Christians are going to reject this. This seems kind of problematic. This is like Zeus becoming a lion or some weird kind of stuff like that. But then here's the second school of thought, which is what most Christians hold. And I'm going to show how it conflicts with the doctrine of no real relations. So we're going to see here, what is it called? Relational models. You see that? Relational models. Now let me read this for you. Models of the Incarnation of the second major category explain incarnation wholly in terms of acquisition. So it's denying the transformation thing. So what does it mean for God to become man? Is it transformation or is it relational? So here's the relational. For defenders of these models, becoming human doesn't mean being transformed into a human being at all. Rather, it means entering into a certain kind of relationship with a human being, or rather with something that would have been a human being had it not been in such a relationship. What the Son acquires on this model is not simply a body, but a composite of body and mind. Okay? Here's another way to understand it. Transformationalists hold that in the Incarnation, the Son was transformed into X. If he himself were not identical with X, then it could not really be said to be human, because to be human is to be X. Relationalists, by contrast, or on the other hand, hold that in the Incarnation, the Son became related to X. On this view, ordinary humans are human in virtue of being X, but it is not actually necessary to be X to count as human. It is sufficient to be related in a sufficiently close way to X. A relationist might say that to be human, it is sufficient to have a human body and a human soul. Being identical with a human body and soul is one way of having a human body and soul, but it is not the only way. When the Son became human, that meant that he acquired a human body and a human soul to the extent that they were genuinely his, but he was not transformed into them. So notice, the transformationalist model is he transformed into a human, like a caterpillar, a caterpillar into a butterfly. On the other hand, the relational model is saying what? That he became human in the sense of, listen what he says, the Son became related to the human nature. Well, let me tell you this. How do we bring this back, Jake, full circle? Well, what did Thomas Aquinas say? He said, let's bring it up again. Matter of fact, let's bring it up again. Let's bring it up again. Oh, sorry about that. That's the wrong slide there. Tab. What am I talking about? Slide. Where is it here? Okay, got it. Look at what he said here. Therefore, there is no real relation in God to the creature. Well, hold on a second. Is the human nature of Jesus Christ a creature? Is it a creation of God? Was it created by God? Well, yes, of course. Every Christian is going to say that. Well, if the human nature of Jesus Christ was created by God, and St. Thomas is saying here, there's no real relation in God to the creature, then how can it be said that the Son became related to the human nature? You can't. There's a direct contradiction. God is not really related to anything in creation. The Son's human nature is a creation. Therefore, the Son cannot become really related to that human nature. If the Son cannot become really related to the human nature, then how do you make sense of this relational model? This relational category of models, I should say, of the Incarnation. It doesn't make any sense. Now, here's what we're going to see. Here's what we're going to see here. Mr. Khalil Andani here, he says, I guess the human nature was united to and became really related to God the Son. But look at this. Well, if that's the case, Mr. Khalil, then the quote here of what a relational model is, that the Son became related to X, is false. Because it's not that the Son became related to the human nature, it's that the human nature became related to God or the Son. But watch, I'm going to show you the further implications of that, of why that's problematic. Look at this. You think I didn't have that ready for you? Watch this. I'm going to share and I'm going to show where Thomas Aquinas brings this very issue up to say that I'm not bringing an extrapolation of his view. Watch, he was a smart guy. By all accounts, he was a smart guy, definitely, although his positions are fundamentally flawed. But I'm going to show you where I'm not drawing the conclusion from him saying, well, he can't really be related to creation, therefore he's not really related to the human nature of Jesus Christ. He brings this very point up. We're going to see it right here. Same work. It's in the Summa. What is this? Summa, it's in the third part, question number 2. And the question is the mode of union of the Word incarnate. So this is where he talks about. This is where he talks about it. He's got 12 questions in this section. We're going to jump down to question number 7. Here it says, Article 7, whether the union of the divine nature and the human is anything created. Look at this. Watch this. Objection 1. It would seem that the union of the divine nature, divine and human natures, is not anything created. For there can be nothing created in God, because whatever is in God is God. But the union is in God, for God himself is united to human nature. Therefore, it seems that the union is not anything created. So he's saying, well, wait, if God can't be involved in anything in creation, and he's really related to this human nature, then this relation can't be created. This is the objection. Objection number 2. Further, the ends hold first place in everything, but the end of the union is the divine hypostasis, or person, in which the union is terminated. Therefore, it seems that this union ought chiefly to be judged with reference to the dignity of the divine person, which is not anything created. Therefore, the union is nothing created. Objection number 3. Further, that which is the cause of a thing being such, there is still more so. But man is said to be the creator on account of the union. Therefore, much more is the union itself nothing created but the creator. Now, listen what he says here. And this is important. And I brought this up in a recent review that we did of a debate between Brother Hashem in Speaker's Corner with Bob the Builder. The guy who never built anything, but yet he's still called the builder. That's a joke. Lighten up. Anyway, so it says here, on the contrary, whatever has a beginning in time is created. That's a principle that he holds to, which also the Ash'aris held to. Now, this union was not from eternity, but began in time. Therefore, the union is something created. So he's saying, no, it's not an uncreated union. It's a created union because it had a beginning in time. I answer that. The union of which we are speaking is a relation. So he says it's a relation which we consider between the divine and the human nature. Inasmuch, look at this, inasmuch as they come together in one person of the Son of God. Now, as was said above, referencing back what was mentioned before, every relation which we consider between God and the creature is really in the creature, by whose change the relation is brought into being, whereas it is not really in God, but only in our way of thinking, since it does not arise from any change in God. And hence, we must say that the union of which we are speaking is not really in God, except only in our way of thinking, but in the human nature, which is a creature. It is really. Therefore, we must say it is something created. You see? Now here he goes on further to substantiate it even further. The union is not really in God, but only in our way of thinking. For God is said to be united to a creature, inasmuch as the creature is really united to God without any change to him. So again, he's sticking to his consistent principle, and he's saying even when it comes to the supposed incarnation, God doesn't really become related to the particular human nature. The human nature becomes related to him. So it's still a one-way direction. Now, so even God the Son, in terms of the second person of the Trinity, he doesn't really love the human nature. Neither does the Father nor the Holy Spirit. They don't love the human nature of the second person of the Trinity. Why? Because it's a creature and they can't stand in that relation, because then that would be a change. So God doesn't, don't feel bad, people. God doesn't, my Muslim audience, don't feel bad. This God that is being portrayed by Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine and others, don't feel bad that he doesn't love Muslims or that he's not related to you and never could be. He doesn't even love Christians and can never be related to them. And it goes further. He isn't even love or really related to the human nature of Jesus Christ. Subhanallah. Now listen to this. Further. Let's listen further here. The specific nature of a relation as of motion depends on the subject. And since this union has its being nowhere save in a created nature, as was said above, it follows that it has a created being. Also, a man is called creator and is God because of the union, inasmuch as it is terminated in the divine hypostasis, or the divine person. Yet it does not follow that the union itself is the creator or God, because that a thing is said to be created regards its being rather than its relation. So notice what he's saying here. He's talking about the Incarnation, which is a fundamental Christian doctrine. He's saying the union of the Son being made flesh. He's not really related to that human nature. It's only in our mind, only in our way of thinking. For God is said to be united to the creature only inasmuch as the creature is united to God without any change in him. So the human nature is really related to God, but guess what? God is not really related to the human nature. Well, then that throws relational models out the window. Because listen to what it says at the bottom. What does it say there? Let me see if you guys can see this. On this view, by contrast, they hold in the Incarnation, the Son became what? The Son became related to X. Well, it can't be said that the Son became related to X, because Thomas Aquinas denies that the Son became related to X. You see? He can't become related to X. So now the transformationalist models are out the window because, if God can't even change in relation, he can't transform like a caterpillar into a butterfly. And he can't even have the relational model, because on a relational model, God becomes related to the human nature, which Thomas Aquinas denies. Now you have no model of the Incarnation to go with if you hold to classical Christian theism or the doctrine of no real relations. You got nowhere to turn. In other words, classical Christian theism is at odds with the doctrine of the Incarnation itself. What does it mean for the Word to become flesh? He became flesh. That's a change itself. How do you explain that if you hold to this doctrine? You can't make sense of it. Now, here's a further implication. Think about this. Let's think about this for a second. If Thomas Aquinas just admitted that the Son, the second person of the Trinity, is not really related to the Christ's human nature, then how in the world is this significant? How is this significant? A Christian could say, in the same way, I'm really related to God. God is not really related. For example, I'm not a Christian, so leave me out of it. Let's use Thomas Aquinas, for example, the great saint. God is not really related to Thomas Aquinas, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt that Thomas Aquinas is really related to God. So what's the difference? What's the difference between Thomas Aquinas and Jesus Christ? Because God, the Son, is not really related to Christ's human nature, but he's also in the same way not really related to Thomas Aquinas. So what's the significant difference? If Thomas Aquinas is really related to God, and so is the human nature of Jesus Christ, well, then what's the relevant difference? How it makes the Incarnation insignificant. What's the relevant difference? So now what you've got to say is what it really means is that it's not in God becoming really related to Jesus Christ's human nature in a significant way, because he's not really related to it whatsoever, in the same way that he's not to Thomas Aquinas. The difference you would have to say is that Christ's human nature became really related to God in a significant way, even more so than Thomas Aquinas. That's what you would have to say. That's the only way to go. But in that case, how is this really a significant incarnation? Because Muslims think the same thing about prophets of God. So now you're getting much closer to Islamic doctrine and how we understand the prophet's relationship to God himself. Because we believe that prophets have a higher status such that they are people who, in a spiritual sense, are much more closely related to God than any chump like me. I mean, who the heck am I, right? We can agree to that. So now if all you're really saying, now look at what the incarnation becomes. The incarnation becomes, all it really means is the human nature of Christ became related to God in a unique and significant way. Well, what does that mean? Muslims believe that. How is that unique to Christianity? How is that a unique doctrine of the incarnation of God becoming man? I thought it was the word becoming flesh. Now it's the flesh relating to the word. Well, wait, hold on a second. Muslims believe that. We believe that Jesus Christ was really related to God as Muslims, as a prophet of God and the Messiah in a unique way. So now we've got to do work here to say, what's the relevant difference? You've just made the incarnation completely insignificant. And not only that, folks, I could throw another wrench into the mix, where there's another wrench into the mix, which is this, but I'm not even going to go into it. I'm just going to give you a hint at it. You see, because Thomas Aquinas and these other classical theists, they have this understanding and this doctrine of composition, right? If something is composed, say there's a thing like, let's just say for the sake of argument, okay? Let's say my phone. Let's just make believe it's made of two parts only. So for simplicity's sake, no pun intended. Okay, so there's one phone with two parts, let's say. Let's say the phone is made of two parts. Classical Christian theists believe that if something is composed of two things, there must be a third thing, which is the cause of the two things being put together. But if that's the case, well, on something, and let me show you here, again, in the introduction to this text, in the different models of the incarnation, they mention different models. One of the types of relational models, which relational model has already gone out the window, is one that's called compositionalist models. See that? Compositionalist. And this is the view that's held by most Christians. I'm going to show you this. Well, it's compositionalist model. A better kind of relational model, so compositionalist model is a type of relational model, is the kind often referred to as compositionalist. On this view, the incarnate Christ is a genuine unity, but a composite one, just as the human body itself is genuinely a single thing, but with parts. Okay? So it's a compositionalist model. So the Son becomes a composite being of the Word, or so the Word and the human nature. So the Son becomes a composite being of the Word and the human nature. So we have two things which are held together, not mixed, but held together. Well, what is the third thing based on their own principles that is the cause of those two things filling out the composite or joining them together? First of all, they're not really, we already found out they're really not joined together in a unique way, because God isn't really related to the human nature. But even if we gave that for the sake of argument, I'm saying this is just a throw in here because I'm feeling it. So I'm just adding it in for extra thing. If you believe in this idea that if there's a composite object of multiple things within one thing, there must be a third thing outside of them which holds those two things together, that causes them to be together. Well, what is the cause of the Son or the Word and the human nature joining them together? What's the cause of it? Well, Christians don't believe that there's a third thing outside of the two which composes them or is the cause for their composition. Therefore, their very own doctrine is being tampered with, or there's been an exception that's being made here, because there is no third thing which is the cause of the two things being composite. Therefore, they're saying that God can be as part of a composite without a cause. Therefore, it negates the principle that if you have something that's composite, that there has to be a third thing which composes or causes the composition of the composite. Now, that's not really, and no pun intended, I didn't even mean to do that. That's not really related exactly to this subject, but that's just an add-in just because I'm feeling it and I love you guys today. So, boom, let's give a quick rundown of what we went over. Now, note, what's the title of the video, folks? The title of the video is Thomas Aquinas Confesses Jesus Doesn't Love Christians. Now, did I establish that? Yes. Why? Because it says that Jesus Christ, who is supposedly God or God himself, isn't really related to creatures. He doesn't love you. You can love him or be related to him, but he can't be related to you. So boom, that's done. Now, it's not just Thomas Aquinas, it's St. Augustine and plenty of church fathers. This is classical Christian theism. Now, what else are we going to add to that? Well, we're adding that if Jesus is God, then he doesn't love Christians either, which is the title. But guess what? Christians don't feel bad. He doesn't love Muslims either. He doesn't love Christians. He doesn't love anything in creation because he's not related to it. He's not really related to it. But don't feel bad either, because the human nature of Jesus Christ, which is a creature, is a creation, God isn't really related to that. But wait, if that's the case, hold on a second. How do we have the incarnation? How is the word become flesh significant, especially if you reject a transformationalist model and you hold to a relational model in which God is really related to X? Well, now you have a contradiction. You say that God isn't really related to creation, but you're saying that God is really related to creation because he's really related to the human nature of Christ, which is a contradiction. So the only way to get out of that problem is to either get rid of this nonsense of doctrine of no real relations like Ryan Mullins does and others, or to say, well, I've got no solution to this. This is just a contradiction, and throw your hands up, which is ridiculous. Or you say what Thomas Aquinas said, the absurdity, because he wanted to hold the doctrine of no real relations, that even God the Son is not really related to the human nature of Jesus Christ. In which case, the incarnation becomes insignificant in Christianity because it's not the Son becoming flesh in a significant way, because he's not really related to it and he doesn't transform into it, that's for sure. But the human nature of Christ becomes really related to God in a significant way. Well, Thomas Aquinas, for example, he's a saint. So we have to say that he was really related to God, wasn't he? So what's the difference between Thomas Aquinas and the human nature of Jesus Christ? Well, now the only thing you can say is because he's a saint, but this was a prophet and a Messiah, right? Well, the most you can say is that Jesus Christ as a prophet and Messiah was related to God in a significant way over and above other people like St. Thomas Aquinas. Well, we can embrace that even as Muslims. So now you've got a Muslim position. There's really no significant difference there. We believe that Jesus Christ was related to God himself in a significant way over and above me. All the prophets have that relationship with God way far above knuckleheads like me on YouTube. So now the whole thing has come full circle. Jesus doesn't love you. The doctrine of the incarnation becomes incoherent with the doctrine of no real relations. If you give no real relations up, then fine. Now you're no longer in classical Christian theism. You've got a whole tradition with problems then. And also, you've got this other problem in which now Jesus's incarnation isn't really significant. It becomes insignificant. You see? So these are the points. And then I brought up the issue of a composite being caused by a third thing outside of the composite. But that's an add-in. I'm going to actually do a deeper dive and a separate video on this. Now, I'll tell you guys this. I have never, in my discussions with Christians, ever seen a Christian who holds to classical Christian theism and the teachings of St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, the Catholic Church, and so on. I have never seen them be able to answer this objection, to show how there isn't a conflict between the doctrine of no real relations and the incarnation, or to explain that if there is no real relation, how are they even defending the incarnation, and it loses its significance. I've never seen them be able to explain this. I'd be happy to if they can. Now, before I end the stream, I want to take a look at some comments in the chat. Let's see what we got here. Okay, yeah, he says Khalilandani says the union is in the creature. Yep, that's right, and that's the problem. Okay, here he quotes, and hence we must say that the union of which we are speaking is not really in God, except only in our way of thinking, but in the human nature, which is a creature, it really is. Of course, so it's a one-way relationship. It's like the husband that loves the wife, but the wife doesn't reciprocate. She doesn't love the husband. It's kind of lonely, man. Kind of lonely. Now, what else we got here? Where we go here? Okay. Let's see. This guy, you are, I have to say, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, vandalist. Always, every single comment section only comments the same thing every time. Who's winning? Even when it's not a debate, even if it could be a discussion, could be a lecture, could be a presentation. He always comments who's winning. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. Always who's winning, nothing else. Very strange. I just wanted to put that on the board because I've been thinking about that and I wanted to address that actually. Comments on all my videos, who's winning, and there is no winning or losing at this juncture anyway. So let's think about the Bible. How does this fit? Is this biblical? Now I'm going to give it to Christians. Abandon this nonsense. Abandon this crap. I'm sorry to say. Abandon this crap of the doctrine of no real relations. Forget about your divine timelessness and changelessness. These are metaphysical assumptions. They don't go with your Bible. Give it up. Give it up. You can't have the doctrine of the incarnation and timelessness and changelessness. It doesn't work. How did God become flesh and he didn't change? It doesn't make any sense. Now, let's read a famous passage. I want to read one famous passage for you in John's Gospel. Okay. Now, one of the most famous Christian passages, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Well, that goes right out the window. For God so loved the world. Hold on a second. St. Thomas just said he doesn't love the world. He's not really related to the world. And love would be a real relation to the world. He doesn't really love the world. He doesn't even love Jesus' human nature, for God's sake. So imagine that is a Christian dilemma for the doctrine of no real relations, in which God isn't really related to the universe and or anything in creation. And at the same time, you have the incarnation, which assumes that he is really related to the universe. It's quite an astounding problem. As I said, I haven't seen any of the classical theists be able to get out of it. The only way I see to get out of it is to just abandon classical theism and admit that God can change or be in time in some sense, or Yeah, you just got to abandon classical theism at that point if you're a Christian and you want to hold firm to the Bible and the doctrine of the Incarnation. How could you hold to it with these kind of positions? Just they don't go together. So Vandalist says truth always wins. Yeah, but dude, it's not always about winning and losing. It's not always about a debate here. So anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this session. It's been going on for over an hour. I really hope that this stuff made sense to you. The 2 links that I shared my screen for, which are St. Thomas Aquinas's, what do you call it? The primary sources. I will have the links in the description of this video, inshallah. Once we go off, I just got to sign in and do that. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. As I said, and with all due respect to the other channels out there, I don't think you're going to get this anywhere else where we go to primary source material of the Christian theologians, really bring these problems and issues out, arguments that you probably never heard before. I hope that you guys are learning something new. I'm learning something new, even just by going over this stuff with you, because it really sharpens me and gets me to think about these things more concisely and fluidly and try and explain it to people. So I appreciate everybody for watching. As always, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed already, click that subscribe and the notification bell to get notified when I go live, because sometimes it could be a little bit sporadic, or at the drop of a hat, I might just get an idea and go live. So I had an idea earlier, and then I created the stream just maybe 5 hours ago and said, let me go live and, talk about this, some of my thoughts I had. So yeah, make sure you hit the like, make sure you hit the subscribe and the notification bell. Also, make sure you share this on your social media platforms, no matter how big or how small. Share with your Christian friends. Explain to them that here's the video that explains that under classical Christian theism and the Catholic Church teaches that Jesus doesn't really love you. So when those missionaries come out to you and they try to tell you, listen, Islam is deficient, Christianity is the truth, God really loves you, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, tell them, no, Jesus doesn't love you, God doesn't love you, God didn't love Jesus. You can respond with that. Also, so make sure you share it with them. I really want this video to get out there. Also, if you haven't clicked the join button right underneath this video, you can click the join button to become a paid member, in which case you'll benefit the channel. And it really helps, guys, because I do have a full-time job, and a lot of this stuff, I put a lot of research into it. I don't just come at this haphazardly. I'm reading these original texts and really trying to come up with content to be able to give you guys something new and different, to hopefully, inshallah, I learn things and you learn things as well. I'm sharing what I am learning from this. So if you really enjoy the content and you're benefiting from it and you're benefiting from the uniqueness of the content, please do consider clicking that join button and becoming a paid YouTube member. Also, if you don't want to do it on YouTube, you can do it on Patreon. The description, the links to my Patreon link are in the descriptions. All the videos, same thing. It really helps with that as well. If you'd like to see me produce more content and free up some of my time, that would help as well, inshallah ta'ala. Now, with that being said, guys, I do have one announcement to make. Next Saturday, so a week from today, I will be debating a Christian apologist by the name of Chris Date, who he's actually an adjunct professor at, I forget the name of the school. I'm sorry, Chris, I keep forgetting the name of it. But anyway, I'll be debating him on his model of the Trinity and whether or not it's coherent and it makes sense and it's orthodox. So we'll be having that debate next week, next Saturday, I believe at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be, that would be 3 p.m. UK time. So be on the lookout for that. It will be on a channel called Explain International, which is a Christian channel. And we will be debating the Trinity next Saturday. I will put a link to it on, Twitter and my social media. So if you haven't followed me, then you guys can also check me out on Clubhouse. I hang out there during the day sometime when I've just got free time and want to chat with people. So that's fun. I do enjoy that from time to time. Other than that, I'm not sure. Oh, also on Tap, Thought Adventure Podcast tomorrow. I will be doing a stream with the three brothers, Yusuf Ponders, Abdurrahman, and Sharif. We will be doing a review of the discussion that we had with Alex Malpass I don't know how many days ago it was now. I lose track. Recently, where we had Abdurrahman and myself, we had a discussion with an atheist philosopher. He's an academic. He was a professor for several years. He's had debates with William Lane Craig, etc. We are a respected guy in the atheist philosophical community. We had a discussion with him, Abdurrahman, and myself on Thought Adventure Podcast Tap. And everything I said about my channel, about supporting it, go consider doing that as well. Here I mainly focus on Christianity. On Tap, we mainly focus on atheism. So go consider supporting that. And again, tomorrow we will be doing a review breakdown of that stream that we had with Alex Malpass. It was kind of technical, difficult to follow at certain places. So we're going to try to condense it, break it down for the audience, what the main topics were, what the main disagreements were, what his objections are, what our responses are, where we think the pluses and minuses of the discussion went. We're going to try to break all that down tomorrow, inshallah, with the four of us. So hopefully you guys go and check that out. And I am really looking forward to it. But anyway, I'm not sure other than that if I'm going to do another video before my debate next Saturday. I might not. I'm prepping for it. So I may not have the time. It all depends. But so I'm really not sure on when my next stream is going to be on this channel. But be on the lookout for it always. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook. And I usually put something in the community page of my YouTube channel as well to give at least a few hours heads up. But so yeah, consider supporting this channel and Tap if you find the content beneficial. But until next time, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. But until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.